Welcome to our next episode of Mentorship Espresso. I'm actually joined today by my new co-host, Brian Lipson, who is also the co-host of our new podcast series called The Mentorship Mindset. Today we have as our special guest, Dr. Fernando Armendariz, who is going to talk about his mentorship journey, those people that were influential to his life and career. He's going to talk about his perspective on mentorship versus coaching, and he's going to leave us with some words of wisdom, especially to those who are new in their journey as behavior analysts. So we hope you enjoy this conversation. It was super fun to do, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. So welcome and enjoy the interview. Dr. Armendariz, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to talk to you. We're excited to learn from you and your vast experience and your journey of mentorship and mentoring others. We're excited to be interviewing you.
Great to be with you.
I want to start off by asking if you could share with us a little bit about yourself, who you work for, how many years you've been in the field of applied behavior analysis, and anything else you want to share about yourself.
Well, my name is Fernando Armendariz. I do have a PhD, and interesting, which is, I think there's only two in the state. I have a psychology license. So I'm a licensed psychologist and a behavior analyst doctorate. They always tell me, why did I get the psychology license? The true story is that when I said, hey, I need to have some kind of the license that gives me the most, possibilities for work. And it was then the licensed psychologist. And then when I had that, they came up with, now we have there also used to be the BCBA, but it wasn't that greatly recognized. But when the insurance started saying, you have to be a BCBA, I said, hey, I'm a licensed psychologist, and it says, no, well, we need you to be a BCBA. I almost felt it like I had a driver's license for big rigs, and they wanted me to take out driver's license for a car. It's just interesting. But hey, I went ahead and got the BCBA anyway. Now, the funny story about why I took the licensed psychologist, I tell people that I took it, I became a licensed psychologist to be perfectly clear on what not to do.
Got it. Well, that makes sense. So you're very clear on that.
If people sometimes want to talk about traditional, medical model psychology, I tell them I got a PhD in that one too, so I can chat with you about it. When I was very young, almost thinking of where am I going to go to college, I read, and a friend of mine told me, hey, I went to a conference of this gentleman that basically said that behavior is a function of, and not just spontaneous combustion from inside, which was the past kind of assumption. And he said it's a function of environmental things. What happens when you behave that impacts if you're going to do it again or not. I thought, for somebody that was into science, I thought that was amazing. I said, wow, now that is interesting. And I began to learn about it, but it took me more than 15 years to go to school because I learned all about behavior analysis as my PhD professor said. Fernando learned everything about ABA prior to ever coming to the university. So maybe that's what gives me that other view we talked about. Why do I say that some behavior analysts do not have the behaviorist or the behavioral worldview? So I studied by writing to this gentleman, and I'll tell you who he was. And he sent us letters back with many boxes of books from all the best psychologists in the field at that time, Michael, Skinner, Montrose Wolf, everybody. We had the best library at Los Horcones, so now I'm talking about the community. And we used to read there all those books and like a book club and said, what do you think about this and what about that? And we started a school, so we began to practice all that we read. And that's why 15 years later, for many reasons, I decided to go to school. So I learned applied behavior analysis from a practice and a book club.
Right. Well, you did something right because, here you are and you have so many brilliant things to say and things that we could learn from. So we appreciate, I think we all have different journeys to get to where we're at, and it doesn't have to be the traditional journey, and we're excited to learn from that. Was there ever a time that you wanted to get out of the field of applied behavior analysis?
Yes. Now, I thought you would be interested with that answer.
Yes.
Never. It's extremely exciting. It's extremely fun. The impact that we're able to make on children's lives. And I'll tell you, and we talked about it last time, how do I intervene, which is very, very different than what's out there called ABA.
Sure.
But lately, first, I've been quite demoralized with the application of ABA in the United States. That's why I've been going to Czech Republic. I was invited to Amsterdam or to Copenhagen because I see that they're starting, and I hoping that I can help them not make the same mistakes. But in the US, it's so driven already by money and the way that individuals, BCBAs are taught and everything, that Skinner once told us, we were chatting with him and we were particularly about this topic. We were talking to him in the early 1980s about this topic about behavior analysts kind of not understanding the behavioral worldview. And he said something that always sticks with me. He says, Fernando, because we were kind of worried, how can we change things? And he said, you have to let the runaway horse go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yes, do I consider the United States application of a behavioral science what I called an ABA? For me, ABA is not a good word. Behavioral sciences. ABA is this set of techniques that people use, and they do not consider science. It's just a technique.
Mm-hmm.
So it's people using specific techniques without knowing the behavioral worldview. That's what ABA is to me. I use it in that regard. Right now, I don't. I'm demoralized. I sometimes say I want to just give it all up, go to the beach here in Mexico, get a Pacifico, and then if somebody asks me what do you do, I'm going to say I'm an investment broker or something, so they don't ask me about ABA again.
I want to follow up because you've referenced the behavioral worldview and how it differs from ABA. So I want to ask you about that in just a sec, but just to piggyback off what you were saying, as a newer BCBA, and I mean I've only been in the field of ABA for just about 5 years. I think your viewpoint and your perspective is so important for, I mean, anybody in this field, but especially those of us who are newer to this field to hear, because we were educated to really perform within this medical model. We weren't really taught that there were other ways to apply this outside of just this very strict context. So I think that might be a little more on the nose of things that are American in general. But so with that, if you could elaborate on exactly what you mean by the behavioral worldview, as opposed to just ABA, like within the medical model.
It is interesting to me that you said to work within the medical model, because I do see what I see as ABA, or in practice, I do see it much more congruent with the medical model psychology than with the science of behavior. All right, I'll explain to you why. I'll try to do it very briefly, although most of my friends would tell you it is impossible to get Fernando to answer anything briefly.
That's why we love having you.
We'll try. So what I call ABA is techniques that do not consider the major implication of the science of behavior. The main implication of the science of behavior is that behavior is shaped by all those contingencies, the responses we're receiving in our environment every second of every day. And if that's our main contribution, which came to revolutionize our world, because before we said, oh, the child or the adult, they do things because of their characteristics or their character, their personality, their disability, everything kind of a spontaneous combustion from inside, which for a scientist that I was when I was taught as a young man, traditional psychology, it almost, I had, when I go to a psychology class, I had to take my wife's anti-vomiting pills, you take when you're pregnant, because that was stuff that would make me vomit. So when somebody said, oh, behavior of individuals is in function of outside environments and how they impact what you do. Whoa, that's interesting. So then that's the main contribution. But then we go to ABA, and I don't see taking that consideration because I see, for example, here's the definition of ABA. It is done out of context, which is where does this kid live every second of his life? At home, some at school if they're big enough, if they're already beyond 3 years old. So out of context in a clinic or maybe even a little room in the house where that's the therapy room, that's where the ABA person goes. Then there's a school, sometimes they go to the corner or some other little room. So out of context, then it is driven by conducted by the therapist or tech, not the teacher, not the parent, not the persons that the individual lives with every second. Is that violating our science? Oh, big time. Is the first thing being out of context violating our science? Yes. Our science is completely 100% contextual. All right. And then, then I say all of the intervention by the person that doesn't live with a child, they're also adult-driven drills. First, they're repeated drills, which they're adult-driven. It's always, give me red, give me blue. So that, if you do it for many, many years, I've seen kids that can speak perfectly well. They can say, "Oh, I would like that cookie with a crumble, with a colorful sprinkles on top." They can speak that well. But if you put cookies there, they go, and they won't say anything until you say, "What do you want?" "Oh, I want those cookies." And I say, "This guy's been drilled with ABA all his life, hasn't he?" "Yeah." So they never teach him to initiate because it's always adult driven, always. So out of context, by the therapist or tech, adult driven with tasks that are somewhat thought to be medically necessary, like discriminate between a triangle and a hexagon, so that once the child discriminates between a triangle and a hexagon, his autism will be gone. I sometimes make that kind of comment. And then after they teach those things, I never see very functional stuff like, are you teaching that kid to play maybe bingo with his cousins? No. All right. And then the last one is the reinforcers used within that are normally contrived. They don't have any relationship to the task at hand. So every one of those points, we're breaking all the roles of behavior analysis. Like, should it be done by that professional? No, by the people he lives with. Should they teach those concepts? No. And we knew this early because if you read the preface on the Me book by Lobas, which, when was it? Very long time ago. He writes, we made some errors. And one of the errors was considering that teaching him certain tasks was going to have him spring out of autism. And he says that never happened. We were wrong.
Yeah.
But people don't read that. Well, no, people just don't read it. And the last one, which is the tasks at hand have to be very functional. I always sometimes make fun and I say, I teach him to wipe his butt. Why? Because I don't want him at 50 years old having somebody to wipe his butt.
Right.
All right. Now, he may discriminate triangles and hexagons really well, and he may discriminate in a field of 3, which sounds very medical, but he's still terribly autistic, not social, and he can't go to the bathroom independently either. So that's what we impact. And the last one, the reinforcer, has to be, we know our science says, it has to be logically connected to what motivated me and the behavior I presented and what happens when I present that behavior. That's my short explanation.
I know a little bit about Los Horcones, and I imagine that was that played a big role in shaping your worldview. Do you mind sharing with us about that project, how it started? Why was it important?
I was mentored by a team. Remember, we had the book club where a bunch of people very motivated for this stuff. And when we were working, they would say, hey, you're supposed to engage with the kid, which means reinforce the kid, before he stalls, and then extend your, fade out of the reinforcer so the kid can do it independently. And what you're doing is you're intervening, you're kind of coaching, and once he stalls, and that is going to make him stall more. That kind of stuff. For me, mentoring is coaching. We coach just like they tell you in baseball, get that elbow up, in baseball. So for me, mentoring is all coaching. How do you do it? And it's not like, how many inches from the child do you sit at the table? So, that for me is like sacrilegious. I mean, I don't do that.
Mhm.
So it's all, how do you do it in everyday life? Which when I train, I got to tell you, when I just had a meeting with a family, and the mom is saying, "Oh, I'm learning so much," and I said, "What you know now, you probably know more than all the certified behavioral analysts in this state." Because they don't know how to do it in natural life. They know how to do it in front of the kid, really. Right. So it was mentored by the group. Uh, we also got very interested with Walden Two to use the science even in a bigger environment, which is a societal design. And we said we have to do it where everybody works at everything. We don't have, this kind of I'm the leader kind of thing. And we also did that. We experimented because we were not Walden Two in the sense that we follow the book. We were Walden Two that we followed a science, which means we analyzed everything. We analyzed that our government system had to be consensus because everybody's valuable, but consensus of those interested and involved. If they're going to have a meeting on the agriculture, like what are we going to grow, and if we're going to open more land, I trust those guys over there with my life. You guys decide. And if we're gonna decide on kiddos at the school, that's what I was and everybody else. Okay, so we did that and it worked. We also made some very good experiments on cooperation and competition, in which we noticed that in competition, the competing parties always just exceed or beat the other one. They don't go beyond that. They just beat the other one and kind of that's where they go. Also, socially, the impact of competition. We used to have kids compete and then say, "Thank you very much. Why don't you go play in the playground?" And we let them out there, and the ones competing never talked to each other. They didn't. And then we had them cooperate. Get some of the kids say, "Hey guys, do this, and you can do it together and help out." And then they would normally perform much higher than the competition ones because this one just wanted to beat the other one, and in cooperation they wanted to just go. The other thing is when we told the ones cooperating, says, "Hey guys, thanks very much. Go play in the playground." They would play.
Oh, okay. Fascinating.
Little goodies like that about. So we were kind of scientists and everything, and definitely everyday life with our government, with our living, with our raising our children, so on. So then, for me, like when I tell people, you got to leave the little clinic thing and look at the dynamics of the child's everyday life with a family. And I said, for you, it's going up. For me, it's coming down. I used to do societal analysis. For me, I came down to the family. So that's what my I think that answered your question. And the mentorship for us is coaching. And I was initially coached by the group because there was always people working together, and they would see you, and I would do it too. And I said, "Hey, um, you don't need to give that instruction so discreet because behavior analysis, and also the books we had there in early '80s were give blue and some. You see, that kid can handle like, hey buddy, where's the green one? And he can handle it.
Mhm.
So don't tell him give blue. I mean, give blue immediately identifies you to me like you're ABA, aren't you?
For those that are listening that are wanting to get or be able to visualize what Los Horcones was, are you able to describe the physical setting of Los Horcones?
Yes. We initially started with a school
Okay.
that just, had rooms and everything. We built it because we were in town first in somebody's home, and we became quite popular because at that time, oh man, there was no competition. Nobody could make any of this kid. They wouldn't even treat them because they were afraid of them or something. So we got some kids to talk and to obey and to go to the bathroom. They were saying, "Ooh, this kid." Now we had long hair, and so they said they look weird, but they're good with kids. So we had to move out of town because that's where there was land cheap, and we built a kind of a basic 4 little rooms, and that was a school. But when we started reading Walden Two and everything else, we said, "Hey, this is nice." We also didn't have to drive back to the city, which was like a half hour. So we said, "Let's live here," and we started making little apartments that didn't have showers and bathroom and everything, because we made our communal area right in the middle that had nice big showers and everything. We also didn't want to use a lot of electricity, so we had our heaters, water heaters, because we had a lot of wood. We are in, Sonora has a lot of mesquites, so we and then we would light it up, and everybody in the evening, because we all finished work, we'd line up and put one more stick on there and let's go. So we had that, and then we built a communal kitchen with dining room, because we also weren't going to make our foods in our apartment individually, and that was one of the works you could choose. I choose to do lunch today, and I'm the lunch cook, right? So all the work was in a little room. We had all the work, and you would choose it. I want to be a cook. I want to work at the school. I'm going to work in agriculture, and you would choose your work. The person running agriculture would always choose a lot, but you would see them, weeding and washing dishes. Also, they had to do everything. Okay, they weren't like, "Oh, I'm the charge of agriculture, so I just, I wear my nice boots and I don't wash dishes." It didn't happen. So that's kind of the physical and a little bit of the social arrangement. It is very hot in Hermosillo, so at that time we had no air conditioning. So if you want to live in, let me see, Fahrenheit, maybe 120-degree weather, 115 at least, and at night, or close to 100, no air conditioning, that's kind of tough.
Wow.
Fascinating. And I know you had mentioned in our pre-chat about the governance of Los Horcones. There wasn't a traditional leadership, or how did you govern rules? And
we had meetings in every area. For example, childcare, agriculture. I'll give you some. The milk cows or something. Go with the milk cows.
Okay.
And we have meetings, and there was decision of saying, "Hey, it's starting to get a little too cold. Should we change the schedule to, instead of 5 a.m. to maybe 6:30? We'll do it at 6:30 in the evening too, because that's where the temperatures drop." All right, let's drop. But we're not going to change it in one day, because the cows get so used to it that we better go in increments of changing that schedule. Got it. All right, everybody's with it. And somebody says, or we could have said, "So tomorrow we start at 6:30 instead of 5. Somebody could have said, whoa. I read on this, and the cows, they don't like that. They may get ill. We have to go in increments of 15 minutes or something." All right, everybody agree? Everybody agree. Let's go. So it was like that, the people there. If I liked the cooking area, which some liked, I liked the cooking, they would say, "The cow people are having a meeting. I don't have to go. I don't have the knowledge to make that decision, so I trust them 100%.
Uh-huh.
So that's what we used to do. And if anybody said, like that guy of saying, "Whoa, stop. Changing it from 5 to 6 in one day is not good. I've heard that you have to do it in increments." And let's say he wasn't all ready with the information to say, "Okay, let's table this one till the next meeting. And then why don't you go ahead and find that out?" And the person would come, "Yes, look, it says here that the best is to switch it 15 minutes at a time." All right. Everybody agree? Yeah. That's how government was done.
Fascinating. My last question about that is, did you ever deal with any misbehavior from the residents, or any criminal type activity, or anything like what we deal with in our societal structure?
Criminal, there was always misbehavior. I'll tell you how we do. Criminal, the closest thing was interesting, because we had long hair and lived in a farm, that if you had drugs, it was your immediately, "Thank you very much, but you have to leave."
I see.
Because nobody there used or had drugs. So if you had them, you go, "There's a bus that comes around." So
You get on the bus. Okay.
get on the bus. Yeah. So that was about as as criminal as it was.
I see.
Now, misbehavior, yeah, there was, and we had our process. We sometimes had our meetings, and we say, hey, for example, you signed up for this work, and and it would be registered because the person in charge would have and said, and you're not doing the work you signed up for.
Uh-huh.
We would have a meeting. Says, what do you think? This cannot continue? You can choose. Well, I like this, and I said, well, choose that, but you have to do what you sign up for. That would be one. And if they don't, we might have a second meeting in which we tell them it continues. If it continues, we might have you use the same bus as the guy that had drugs.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it went. We would count them. Hey, what about this? What about that? Particularly if it was more spontaneous, like how do they respond? We would go, oh, think about it. So then, if it took a little more coaching or helping them, but there was always that third option. And if we don't see any changes, you would probably be asked to leave.
That makes sense. And was this both the residents? Were they both male, female? It was a mix?
Yes, they were both male and female, married and not married.
Okay.
Children and no children, young and old. We had a few individuals that were older than we were. Remember, I was in my early 20s. I started it. I started at 18.
Wow.
I used to hang out with B.F. Skinner like at 22, and he was like 80 something.
Fascinating.
I like his humbleness. We would ask him, hey, what do you think about this? And he would say, you know more about that than I do. Come on. He was always very, very humble.
What an experience.
It was definitely in a group setting where some people would participate, and it wasn't one person. And we would give them very, very precise feedback. We would say what would help you, what kind of responses from us would help you improve that. And we would give them all the assistance possible. And if they were improving, we wouldn't go to the second and third meeting if we're seeing some real good effort.
This is such an interesting topic to me. It could probably be a book, and I would be very interested in reading about it. I shared with you, I learned about Los Horcones in graduate school because it was one of two, I think, that's ever been a replication of Walden Two, of the book, So that's it was always very fascinating to me that, there were some communities out there that went to try to implement these principles that were in the book. So, but now segueing to mentorship, I wanted to kind of circle back to see if there were any influential people in your career that you feel helped you get to where you are now. I understand the group provided coaching, but in terms of
there definitely the group provided coaching, because we all read the books and everybody, would pass around the same one. I'm reading this one, you're reading that one. Now you read this one.
Sure.
Now, the person that impacted us a great deal was Sid Bijou. And I don't know if I said that, but he was the first one we sent that letter, and he sent us all the books from his buddies, which was everybody.
Uh-huh.
And he would come 15 days every year.
Wow.
He had the only room with air conditioning in the place.
Okay.
We were not about to invite a Sid Bijou and have him be at 120 degrees all the time. He would often tell us, hey, do this, do that. And then he would often also praise and say, I need 3 PhD candidates to do what one of you is doing. And we go, hey, thanks a lot. So he would mentor us then. And then there was Skinner regarding maybe more so not the school part, but the big picture of the community. There were others, Miller, because he had a kind of a interesting dorm that was somewhat communal, very limited, but at Kansas. And we went to visit him often. Even Julie, Skinner's daughter, visited. He never did because he was old and I think a bit frail, and his wife was always concerned, Mexico, backward. You're going to be right next to a saguaro over there or something, so she didn't let him go.
That's fascinating. I mean, those are some of our founding fathers of our science. So
people think that science just gives you facts and humans give it value. And I tell them that's not how we see it. Um, we see it, you see it that way because you have a narrow concept of science in the world. For example, you say uh, fertilizers make plants grow. See, I know that much. We put fertilizer, plants grow. And you say, but it's our decision how to use them. And I say, nah, no, it isn't. Why? Because if you had more science, you know that that fertilizer will deplete your ground, and in about 3 years, it won't work anymore. So if you have lots of science and see what's the impact, for example, on the level of nutrition in what you're growing with that fertilizer compared to other, the fact that you have a live soil that will continue to produce, then you begin to see that if you look at whole world science, not just one little aspect, science does give values.
Fascinating. That's a fascinating perspective.
Yeah, and it sounds like just in the sense of mentorship, that very impactful, that helps really guide you for what you're doing.
And it's kind of the same kind of analysis for the difference between ABA and the world and the behavioral view, which is if you only know that, look, discrete trials does make the kid learn. And I want to emphasize right now as I do in my presentation, this discrete repeated trials, as I define them, they were great. They helped us show that these children with autism could learn. They were the greatest thing. But that doesn't mean we should keep doing them now. Okay. And I give the example, I think Isaac might have told me once he liked it. I have an orthopedic surgeon that's my cousin that used to be the orthopedic surgeon for the Phoenix Suns, the professional basketball team.
Okay.
And he said in the 70s, I used to open your knee, fix you up, and in 6 months I have you walking perfectly. It was the greatest thing then. We don't do that anymore. I make a little hole, I fix you up, and I have you walking in 6 hours, not 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
That's science.
Absolutely.
Doing the same thing we're doing in the 70s, that's kind of keeping the same technology, not science.
Right. Has there been anybody that you've mentored? Anybody who's been your mentee that you have some great experiences that you want to acknowledge?
Hundreds of parents and all my employees.
Yeah.
Because I mentor everybody. Remember, I coach you on how you're going to do it. And I don't tell you drill this kid on the difference between triangle and hexagon. I don't do
Right.
How do you do it every day, off the cuff, sometimes either utilizing the natural situations or orchestrating them for them to happen. The child may think they're initiating, but I set the world for them to want to initiate.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I may sometimes put a little bag of popcorn, make a lot of noise, pop a couple of pieces in my mouth, act really dumb, and then the kid comes in, yanks at me, and goes, "Hey man, what's up, man? It's a nice sunny day, huh?" And he goes, "Popcorn. Oh, I'm sorry. Here, I didn't know you wanted any." So that's how we do it, right? Sure. And I got to teach them, and I teach parents. I'm going to teach you to be anti-mother. Why? Because mothers anticipate everything. You know what your kid likes half an hour before he wants it, and you do that. I can't have you do that. I want you to, he loves juice. I want you to serve yourself and give it a sip and act dumb. So he comes over and goes, juice. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. So that's utilizing technique all day long with everything.
I really like how you say all of these people are people who you are mentoring or have provided mentorship with. Or for. It sets an amazing mindset for everybody involved. You really are being very clear of, I have this valuable information to help you improve in the ways you want to improve. So trust me, take my hand, and we will do this together. And I think it's sometimes in our lives, it's hard enough to even find one or two people that we feel comfortable enough or courageous enough to get into that space with. But having the perspective of, I am actively mentoring so many people, I think it just opens the door for so much knowledge to be shared and so much compassion and love to be shared as well.
All the time. It's definitely my fun. I thought you were going to say, because that's what I think people say, Oh, mentorship is when you both sign that contract that the BCA. No,
No, I don't think true mentorship should have a contract signed to it.
I do it for everybody. Remember, I teach you where do you look, how do you respond when you act dumb, when you act puzzled, when you're excited, when you're not. I teach you to do all that very naturally all day long.
As we start to close out the interview, I have a couple more questions. When all is said and done, what would you like to be known for?
Interesting enough, the part that has hit me the most, parents telling me my kid is great and I'm so happy with that. It's good. But I can give you an example of when it's been even better. I've had parents that I helped when the kid was 3, 4, 5, 6, and then they maybe moved away. Because I was going to ask you, do you know what is even better than to teach a parent to work with their child? They say, because the kid will learn really fast because they're teaching all day long. And I said, yeah, there's something even bigger than that. What is it? That they now have a teacher, mentor, or support that will continue to help them grow for the rest of their life together. So that one was almost never considered an idea. You never see it mentioned anywhere. I tell them, I am teaching the lifelong support for that child. Because most people say, I'm going to work with them with, triangle versus the hexagon here for maybe a year or two while the insurance pays for this and the insurance stops. And I say, yeah, that kid's going to nosedive big time. Why? Because the environment is still the same. So I said, now I got meant. So my best thing that I want to be known for is from those children that were 3, 4, and 5, when I helped the parents, a few of them, I'll tell you one, came by here at 18, 20, 19, and they were coming from New Mexico where they lived, and they came by, and he said he's now in his senior year in high school. He plays for the baseball team. He's very good. He's got a lot of friends, and he loves school. And he says, yeah, I like school, and I play baseball, and I love it. And how you doing in school? He says, I do well. I'm not exactly a student, but I hang in there. And I said, excellent. So then when they were walking out, the parents said, we have to leave because we're on our way to California. Parents walked down to right in front of my house here. They came and visited me on a Saturday in my house. So they were walking to the car. The individual, it was a big kid now, going to the car behind him. He kind of stopped halfway to the car, turned around, came back to me and said, thank you. That's what I want to be known.
There we go.
That's
beautiful.
That's everything.
Yep.
Yeah. The last question I have is if you have any words of wisdom that you would want to give newer behavior analysts.
Simple one to not confuse them is consider that our contribution, the main thing that drives your actions and your studies, which is we came to revolutionize the world by saying every second the world is responding to you. Sometimes it's physical because you walk out without shoes around here and you burn your feet at 120 degrees hitting the asphalt. It's normally like 170, the asphalt. So you're going to go get your shoes on. It could be the physical world, but it's mostly social. And the way that impacts you, take that as your guide and say, does my intervention, is it congruent in any way with that? And then I sometimes recommend a few books that talk about how do you do more incidental stuff. Even those books, they kind of make the same error. Sit with the child and go, oh, why do you say that? You're kind of leaving the door open for, again, drilling in the table. But they're a lot better than the sit in the table and tell the kid, give me blue. If he responds, you give him the Cheerios. If he doesn't respond, you grab his hand. And so a lot better than that. So I sometimes guide him to that. But at least if I tell them, consider our biggest contribution, because it wasn't, that reinforcement works or that we break down the task. All that is fine and dandy. But the biggest one is that every second of your life is impacting your behavior and the behavior of a child, much like gravity.
Fascinating perspective. Thank you for grounding us, in what is the science, right? And thank you for your time and allowing us to interview you. You're a friend of ours, so So we look forward to staying in touch. Dr. Armendariz, thank you.
You're also a friend of mine. I am hoping, yes, if there's a few individuals that are a little older, I cannot identify with those older folks.
That's right. You're one of us, Dr. Armendariz. You're one of us.
I'm one of you. No, but if there's some older folks that are not runaway horses and can take this and change a bit, I'm happy. But I do it more for the younger generation that are just starting. I also want to say this. I've seen a lot of behavior analysts, and I want to impact them so this doesn't happen. I've seen them here in Arizona. It happens a lot. They're getting into the emotional and the act stuff, and they're getting there because, and my assumption, I don't know if I'm correct, is that ABA, the way it is run, is so boring and so cold and so sometimes ineffective that if you're going to do it for a lot of years, you go, damn, this is boring. So then when somebody tells you, oh, you can consider the child's feelings, stuff, oh, that sounds great. So I think that option becomes it sounds very romantic. I tell people traditional stuff sounds very romantic. So it draws people to that because this is a bit cold and dry. But when I explain it, that it's every second and how we do it in everyday life and incorporate everybody and consider the child and consider his everyday life and basically respond in ways that are going to make the child more happier, more productive, more participatory and all that, it takes away the boring kind of cold stuff. And that's what I would like to do with the young generation. Say, don't get bored. Don't have to jump into emotional stuff because you're bored.
I think that's well said. We thank you again for your time. And I'm sure we'll chat again. And we look forward to staying in touch, Dr. Armendariz. Thank you so much.